I have here 3 levels of chicken stock, each level increasing in depth of flavour. We'll talk about the third level separation later on. They are all made with just chicken bones, scraps and water, no other ingredients, to unlock the full potential of the bones. I'll also be covering how to get chicken bones. How does the length of boil affect flavour over time, and is there a saturation point? And I also found a system of making chicken stock continuously, so I always have chicken stock on hand to improve my cooking. First, chicken bones. We can obtain it easily by either purchasing it off the shelf or invest some time and effort to learn how to debone a whole chicken. In short, remove the legs at the joint, cut off the head, remove the wing bones and the wishbone, slice the breast meat off near the bones, and remove the thigh bones. I don't want to trivialize this as it takes skill and practice to do this right without cutting yourself, so I'll do a tutorial separately. Either buy your bones off the shelf or you could save money in the long run compared to the market price, and here are the statistics. The second more common way to get bones is the bones from our cooked chicken, like a rotisserie chicken. I used to throw away the bones after eating the meat, but I would like to share how we could turn these bones into a continuous supply of chicken stock at our own schedule. To make our level 1 chicken stock, I'm using fresh chicken bones and scraps here, including the head. But hey, that's what makes this a complete chicken stock, right? You can use any part of the chicken for the stock, as Daniel Gritzer from Serious Eats found different flavor profiles. Then cover with water. Daniel also found that the ideal weight of chicken to water is 1:2, so I tried to stick to that ratio, and I also find that it is enough to cover the bones with water. Simmer at the lowest heat setting, because it is low enough not to cause a rolling boil, but it turns off by itself after 8 hours maximum and I have to turn it on again. That's the induction hob by design. But it's really a set and forget function while I do other things for the day like cutting up the chicken meat for stir fry. But for this experiment, I'm monitoring how the temperature rose over time and it still managed to reach just under the boiling temperature and cook gently over time. I didn't strain the stock of any scum, and what's interesting is that the scum or bubbles at the surface gradually reduced over time. I took a sample out of the stock for a photo and then put it back afterwards into the pot to avoid diluting it. And I have a white printing paper set up here so that we can see the colors clearly. If we assume color represents flavor here, then the greatest change in flavor occurs within the first 4 hours. What this implies is that if my schedule doesn't have a 4 hours window, then I would freeze the bones or accumulate them until I have that window of time to do the bottling at the end. In this round, any further boiling beyond 4 hours to 8 hours didn't yield any more flavor, but later on I found out that you could actually get more flavor, because as you can see, the scrap meat still do have flavor as Natasha enjoyed eating them as a snack, and the bones are still pretty hard. A quick note about the yield is that I got about the same amount of liquid I put in. To make what I call a level 2 stock, I have some new bones here which I'm going to use to boil with the level 1 stock from yesterday to enrich it with more flavor. There are Reddit articles talking about this idea, some say yes, some say nay, but I think there's still a lot of room to pack flavor into the liquid because people actually reduce stock into a thick demi-glaze. Plus, we're topping up with some water too to match the 1:2 bones to water weight ratio in case the bones are a little heavier this time. So you could keep going if the stock is still like liquid. Here's how it looks like boiling over time, which looks similar in pattern going from tan to yellow color. And here is how the level 1 stock of 8 hours compares over time with reboiling the stock with new bones for another 8 hours for a total of 16 hours. Although the colors look about the same, the 16 hours one tastes twice as rich, like chicken soup for the soul. You can find my full tasting notes here. There is still flavor in the meat scraps and the bones are still hard as we learnt earlier, so I tried boiling them for another 8 hours overnight to see what happens. In the morning, it would have been 24 hours of boiling bones for this stock, and I definitely see a color difference here as it's starting to transform into a milky bone broth. When I check the bones, the smaller bones like the feet are now falling apart at the tip, while the bigger bones are still hard in the middle. So I boiled again for another 8 hours, and this time, the big bones become crumbly. Some people worry that bones are not safe to eat because it may pierce you inside, but if the bones haven't reached this state yet, like you can mash it with a spoon, then it needs longer to break them down. Every bone is now a crumbly, wet chicken biscuit that dissolves in your mouth, revealing a rich chicken flavor, though it leaves behind a gritty, sandy texture which isn't pleasant. But it has an umami roasted chicken flavor, even though I didn't roast the bones. If there's an endgame to chicken stock, I think this is it, when the bones and the surrounding liquid taste like each other. The yield has also gone down as the bones has soaked up some of the stock, so this led me to blend the bones to obtain what I call lavatory stock. Let the stock cool down to touch before blending on low to break up the bones into little bits, or it would be too sludgy and difficult to get the juices out. Then strain them in a fine mesh bag, and what we get is a beautiful tan color stock that really reminds me of tonkotsu ramen soup. It's hard to believe that it's just water and chicken meat scrap and bones, no cream and not even salt, and it's rich, creamy and umami. Rinse the pot so that it's free from grit, and bring the strained liquid back up to a boil to sterilize it before bottling our extra rich, levert-free chicken stock. It's not even a stock now, it's like liquid chicken. After straining, we're left with the ashes of a chicken. If you have gotten up to this point, we have successfully extracted the soul of a chicken and used its life well all the way to the marrow of its bones. If I were to plot how the stock flavors increase over time, I find that we do run into diminishing returns after 4 hours. So at this point we can either add new bones or we can continue cooking the old bones, because at some point after 8 to 16 hours of boiling, the bones start breaking down further into a bone broth and we get more flavor until the stock reaches an equilibrium in flavor with the bones. But after chilling the lavatory bone stock, something weird happened. It separated into 2 layers. The upper layer is a more fatty kind of pudding, while the bottom layer is the usual jelly. To investigate further, I took a sample of each layer and a mix of the top and bottom. Here's how every one of them looks like in chilled form, and after giving each of them a gentle steam to warm up to room temperature, we tasted each of them for the nicest one, and here are our findings. Firstly, the rotisserie chicken stock didn't appeal to us because it's overly salty from the barbecue sauces. Then, as expected, the chicken bone stock tastes better the longer it boils, even if it's for the same set of bones. What stood out to me is that the 32 hours one has umami flavors. For the blended fat layer, it's really rich like chicken butter, and it probably has to be combined with something else to make it good. And interestingly, the jelly portion reminds me of chicken essence with dark, bold chicken flavors without any fatty mouthfeel. This was made in about the same way chicken essence is reportedly made, by removing the fat content, so no wonder it tastes like it. And for the mixed sample, it's just like ramen soup as expected, good for making ramen when diluted with a little water. Whichever level of stock you choose to make, I also want to show how we can have a continuous supply of chicken stock. I just made here poached chicken for chicken rice, and I'm deboning the chicken, but the bones still can be used. In theory, we can upcycle the chicken stock infinite number of times until it becomes pure chicken syrup like demi-glace. But in reality, we want to use chicken stock in our cooking frequently. So the way I see making and using chicken stock is like making deposits and withdrawals of an investment stock account. Putting new bones into the stock is like a deposit that grows in flavors over time. I let the bones simmer day and even overnight so that I could bottle or use it the next morning. Then, once it matures, I can withdraw some of it to cook rice. One of the ways to improve the flavors of our food instantly is to replace water with chicken stock, like deglazing a pan or cooking yummy chicken rice. So having a perpetual stock is game-changing because it works with many dishes to elevate its flavors with natural umami. I find it similar to having a sourdough starter with feeding times and schedules to follow. Similarly, our chicken stock can also continue indefinitely as long as we make some, but not all withdrawals from it for cooking, and deposit new bones from time to time to boil for new stock. The old bones boiled past 24 hours can be eaten or discarded if I don't want to make a bone broth. Now I know how time transforms just bones, scrap meat and water into magical stock with increasing levels in intensity over time. And I now know how to make a good chicken stock for good chicken rice.